Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the future of the water and wastewater industry and the careers you didn't know about. And I'm your host, Dave Kosminski, and we have a special guest in the studio this morning, from Snyder Engineering, the Director of Water Infrastructure, Mr. Jim Dabbo. How are you, Jim?
Good. Thank you for having me, Dave.
All right. Fantastic. So thanks for coming up. And in fact, we've had a couple folks from your organization up here, and Donnie and Zach were here and so forth, and Mr. Mike Archer. So tell us how you got into the water industry.
It was more of, instead of getting into it, was almost like falling into it for me.
Okay.
So I had quite a few interests as a child. One of them, of course, was building stuff. My father was an industrial arts teacher.
Okay.
And I think that kind of was the kind of catalyst for getting me into at least the engineering field.
Yep.
And then as part of that, as every kid does, I loved playing with water. I loved playing with the hose. And then it's kind of, the water industry is kind of, it seems, even to today, if you're not in it, you're not really that, you don't know much about it. Typically.
No, you aren't aware of it.
It's almost like a hidden secret.
Exactly.
So, when I graduated college, I was still thinking I was going to go more towards the structural side.
Yep.
And then, luckily, Don Snyder, who I went to college with, got a job with a civil engineering firm. And, I wasn't having all that. I applied to a couple structural firms, and he goes, we're also looking to hire here. He did his internship a year before there. So,
yeah.
He goes, if you're interested, send a resume. He goes, I know it may not be exactly what you were looking for, but give it a shot.
Yeah.
So I gave him my resume, had an interview, and once I started working there, it really opened up my eyes to something I really didn't learn much about in college, as far as how big of an industry it really is.
Sure, absolutely.
And at this point, I would say I don't want to be anywhere else.
Okay. Well, the thing is that it's the whole premise of this podcast is to make people aware of the careers in the water industry. It's as you said, it's kind of a hidden secret. And kids getting out of high school and going into college, don't really know how much there is in the industry. Okay, the umbrella of the water industry is absolutely huge. Okay, I mean, we go from engineers to inspectors to construction people to engineer, to operators. The list goes on and on. HR, accounting, and so forth. And that's my whole premise of getting this podcast out there is to, make students aware, because, it's funny. I've been doing this podcast for now almost a year and a half, and 85 to 90% of the people, that I ask how they got into the water industry, say exactly what you said. They kind of stumbled into it. They knew somebody that knew somebody. Here, try this, and go from there. And then once you're in it, you realize how huge it is and how important it is.
Yep.
So tell us some of the projects that you guys are working on.
My group mainly focuses on water mains.
Okay.
Water main, water infrastructure. Hence the Director of Water Infrastructure title.
Yeah, yeah.
So a couple of the notable projects, we did a couple. We're working on some interconnection projects right now.
Okay.
For one client in particular.
Yeah.
They are DPH funded projects.
Okay.
So there's sure. It's very paperwork intensive.
This SRF funding?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But that also adds a whole nother element of challenge, and it's actually enjoyable in a way.
Yeah.
Some people may disagree with me, but I enjoy it, as well as working with people we haven't worked with yet.
Yeah.
Different working with the state. As opposed to just working with the client, maybe municipality sure. adds another dimension to it.
Oh, adds another layer. Especially when you start dealing with SRF, then the paperwork that goes with that. Okay, to make sure that you're in compliance and you're dotting all your I's and crossing your T's, and so forth. Sometimes that can be a challenge. Now, who do you work with at the state? You work with Mandy or?
We work with Joe. Typically is our direct contact, Joe Bueller.
Oh, okay.
So he's really assisted on a lot of this.
Okay.
And we've gotten to know him quite well and,
Okay.
and work with him. So it seems like what the DPH, a lot of times they'll appoint somebody to your projects, and
Okay.
it's really your direct contact. And
Yep.
everything else still goes to review for the rest of the group.
Yeah.
But everything goes through that one individual.
Okay. So what size interconnections are you doing with?
12-inch.
12-inch main?
12-inch ductile iron, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, primarily, most of the do you deal with a lot of well systems or wet reservoirs, or what kind of systems are you? I know you do a lot with Connecticut Water and Aquarion and so forth.
It's a smattering of both, depending on where the source of water in that system is.
Okay.
A lot of these are related to interconnecting a satellite system with a main system.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of it being for PFAS is a big issue,
Oh, God,
a rising
yes.
issue now. So a lot of this is kind of caused that these projects to develop.
Sure.
So it's really taking the satellite systems and connecting them to a larger system, and then just leaving that as a backup source for emergency.
Sure.
But now you're taking the water from the main system. So
Right.
you're essentially broadening.
Oh, yeah.
And bolstering everything.
Exactly. Well, my last guest, there's obviously we had Dan Lawrence on from Aquarion. So, a lot of their systems are, interspersed with around the state as far as that goes. But what they're doing is interconnecting a lot of their systems too. Depending on whether it's groundwater, whether it's surface water, and so forth. But when you get down into the Wilton area and all of that kind of stuff, they got a pretty expansive system, and I think they're over 400,000 customers, so they're a big player in the game as far as that goes. So going back to school, primarily your focus of study was engineering.
Yes, yeah. So initially, oddly enough, my focus when I went to school, and I actually one of the reasons why I selected the college was I had an interest at the time in environmental and engineering and a little smattering with law.
Okay.
So my parents suggested, hey, why don't you... my father was working at a college fair.
Okay.
And he saw something for Roger Williams University.
Okay.
And they had an environmental engineering program and a law program.
Okay.
So they suggested, hey, why don't you take a look at this school?
Okay.
And then, at least with an engineering degree, the engineering degree is kind of like the multi-tool of the education industry or of schooling. You could go in any direction with engineering. So I figured at a minimum I'll get an engineering degree, and then that'll just broaden my horizons once I graduate. So I got into school, and after one or two environmental courses, I noticed my interest was more towards the general engineering side of it, structural side, and even mechanical side.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going to switching my major to general with a structural minor, and that's what I graduated with.
Okay.
So with the general engineering major, you get an exposure to water resources,
right?
Hydrology and hydraulics. So I had that portion of it a little bit, but still didn't really know much about the water industry per se until I got out of college and applied and got my first job.
Okay.
And that's when that really started happening, where I started to see what was really involved in it, and it was much more than I could have ever imagined. Yeah.
Going back to high school, did you have did your guidance counselors push you in any direction, or how did that?
Not so much. I was your typical high school kid.
Get it done.
get it done. I had, obviously, being an engineer now, I had an interest in science and math, and those are my two favorite subjects all through school.
Okay.
But typical high school kid, sports was the focus.
Yeah.
And then behind that was the actual school. It was,
okay.
There were days like every other kid. You bring home a backpack full of books, you sit it on the table. The next morning, you pick it up and you carry it back, and everybody looks at you. Would you do that for a workout?
And what sports were you involved in?
Soccer, cross country, wrestling, track.
Oh, okay. All right. So both spring and fall, you had them all covered.
In winter, I had every season covered with something.
Yeah. There. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think from a standpoint of making we're trying to drill down and get back down into the high school, middle school now things, and getting this out to the the guidance counselors. At least it makes students aware of the potential that's out there. This industry is not an industry that can be outsourced. You got to have boots on the ground, and you don't necessarily have to go to college either. To become a water operator or distribution operator and so forth, you get your certifications and you're good to go. Because not everybody is meant to go to college, but by the same token, there are opportunities, under this water umbrella, and not only water but wastewater. Yesterday, I had one of our operators from our wastewater plant on and so forth, and he's went through high school with with an interest in biology, and then went on into biomolecular a degree, and landed at the treatment plant. But by the same token, the way he got there was his mother says, well, this job is open in this here. Why don't you check it out? And he did, and he's working. That's the thing. Basically, you go to a point where it's a secure occupation. It's well paying and so forth. So you can make a very good living. Now your firm also got I think Don started a construction side of the industry of the business too. So what does that involve?
He does a lot more towards small treatment facilities.
Yeah.
At this point, that's where he kind of got to start with it.
Yeah.
So, and then that almost fell sort of as like an accessory to the engineering side, and then in the last 2 years, it's become its own entity.
Yeah.
So it's broadening its horizon. Still, the focus is on the smaller treatment facilities.
Yeah.
And then branching out to larger ones.
Sure. Now, the treatment and design of those systems, do you get involved in that at all, or?
Not in the actual building facility. That's actually in Zach Kugler's group.
Okay.
Falling under treatment and design.
Okay.
We deal more with the in-road work.
Okay.
The actual designing of the water main, where we're going to route it, the sizing, and then there's a lot of coordination with the three groups, because they deal like for instance, an interconnection project. Some of them, or one in particular, involves a couple pump stations. So. We're coordinating through the groups. Where do I need to leave my pipe so that they can
pick it up,
and what sequence? How do we need to install it?
Design
what needs to be
facility.
installed first in
Right.
order for them to supply water to, test their facility and moving on to the next step.
Yeah. Putting it up, it's just like connecting the dots. You go from there. Yeah, that's great. Exactly. When you start working with water mains and so forth, obviously state regulations are changing, all the time. As you mentioned before, PFAS is, the lead and copper rule. That's another, a mitigation factor that, depending on the system that you have to contend with. And, the lead and copper rule, they just came out with some new revisions of that. They just came out with some new revision settlements on the PFAS. So that's going to be interesting. I've been following that in the legislature. I'm on the legislative committee, and so we're trying to track that stuff as it comes down, and how it affects water companies, and how it affects. Well, obviously, since you're involved in a water company, that's going to be involved with stuff that you deal with as well. Go from there. Great. One of the things also I try to involve is what do you do for fun? What do you do for hobbies?
Well, my number one hobby prior to children was always exercise.
Okay.
I was a very avid runner.
Okay.
Working out, weightlifting. Those were typically my hobbies. Now it's kind of morphed into being a father.
Yeah. How many kids?
2 children.
2. And how old?
One's 4.5, and one's 7.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. There you go. They grow up quick. enjoy.
Yes, they do.
Enjoy them while they're young. Okay. Now, what are they? Now, what's the 7-year-old into soccer at all?
Yeah, his favorite sport's soccer.
Yeah.
He plays spring and fall.
Okay. Yeah.
So my wife is turning into the soccer mom
The
she never wanted. It was hoping to not be, but
yeah, getting the bleacher butt, sitting on the bleachers, watch it as far as that goes. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So anyway, as you know, one of my altar lives is music. So, what's your favorite kind of music? You have any?
Generally, I would say classic rock is probably my favorite.
Okay.
I guess it's kind of, I have sort of a diverse, which probably most people my age, late 30s, early 40s has.
Yep.
We grew up where all our parents were listening to the older 60s and 70s classics,
yep.
and then at that time, the Rolling Stones were still pretty popular.
Oh God, yeah.
So we all pretty much have the same type of music. It's more diverse than say a generation before us is.
Okay.
So most of it's a classic rock, a little bit of country here and there.
Okay. Any favorite groups?
It's not so much a favorite. I have like a top 5 I bounce between over the years.
Okay.
Anywhere from, again, Rolling Stones to
Stones are still doing it, man. They just released a new album. Crazy.
The Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Collective Soul, which is kind of an odd one.
Okay.
Boston, which is
There you go, right out of Boston. Yeah, for sure.
So there's a few of them, and it depends what my activity that I'm doing at the time listening to. If I'm driving, usually it's a little lighter type of a rock,
more subdued.
Or if I'm working out, maybe I'm looking for something closer to AC/DC.
Yeah, pumping it. Okay. Well, do you remember the first concert you went to?
Oh boy. I don't think I actually ended up at a concert till I was in college.
Okay. What was that?
And that was actually Third Eye Blind.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's spring weekend.
Okay. Where was it? Where did you go see them?
That was at Roger Williams.
At Roger Williams. Yeah. Okay. Nice
and convenient.
There you go. Bring them in house. That's great. A lot of that. So, okay. The other wrapping up questions. Okay. If you got stuck on a desert island, what would be your desert island food that you could eat every day?
Desert island food? Well, would I have a way to cook it?
Sure.
Okay. Well, desert island, I'm thinking maybe lobster.
Okay.
Depending on where
seafood.
Yeah, some kind of seafood, lobster, clams.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. Take advantage of it.
There you
Seize
go.
the situation.
Absolutely. It's amazing. The most people answer. Pizza's high on the list. Cheeseburgers are high on the list. Sushi has become a favorite as well. But it's amazing the different tastes of people that have in their dietary conscience. But it's amazing. So anyway. All right. Hey, thanks so much for coming down. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Well, we're going to get this out there. We get it post-processed. I'll shoot you a link, and we'll get it up on the website. And but we should be awesome. All right. And so until our next episode, that concludes this episode, of the future of the water and wastewater industry and the careers you didn't know about. I'm your host, Dave Kosminski, and Mr. Jim Dabbo was in the house from Snyder Engineering. So thank you, Joe, and for seeing you. And we'll see you on the rebound. Are you going to the luncheon?
Luncheon? No, unfortunately, I have too many things going on today. But Steve Melanson will be there.
All right. Yeah, I did see Steve. All right. Fantastic. Mr. Fuller. All right. Thanks again, guy. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.